Imagine this. You were adopted as a baby, dropped out of college, and traveled to India to meditate. You even thought about becoming a monk. Then, you built a company from nothing. It grew fast, so fast that you hired a famous CEO to help run it. But years later, the company started to struggle. And that CEO, he turned on you. He joined forces with the board and kicked you out of your own company. It was the hardest moment of your life. This was the reality for young Steve Jobs. Fast forward 12 years, he returns to a company on the edge of bankruptcy. But this time, he doesn't just save it. He transforms it into one of the biggest tech giants in the world. This video uncovers the incredible story of Steve Jobs and the key principles that shaped his success. Steve Jobs was born on February 24, 1955, in San Francisco, California. His biological parents, Joanne Schiebel and Abdul Fattah Jandali, were both college students at the time. Joanne, from a Catholic family, faced pressure from her parents to give up her baby because they didn't approve of her relationship with Abdul Fattah, a Muslim from Syria. Back then, their relationship was seen as controversial, and they thought raising a child together would be too difficult. Joanne and Abdul Fattah made the hard decision to give Jobs up for adoption. He was adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs, a kind couple who raised him in Mountain View, California. Jobs always knew he was adopted. His parents told him from an early age. He understood why his biological parents had given him up. They had no other choice. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling of being different. This feeling shaped his view of life and made him more determined. His adoptive parents cared for him, and their love helped turn his strong focus into a drive for perfection. Jobs' father was a mechanic who loved fixing and restoring old cars. He set aside a space on his workbench in the garage for Jobs and taught him how to repair and modify cars, always hoping to pass on his love for mechanics and cars to his son. Jobs loved spending time with his father, but he didn't develop a passion for fixing cars. However, during this time, he came across electronic devices and became interested in how they worked. This early interest was like a seed, shaping Jobs' life forever. The influence of Jobs' father went beyond just teaching him about cars and mechanics. When Jobs was about 5 or 6 years old, his father was building a fence around their house. He handed Jobs a hammer and asked for his help. While they worked, his father lifted a wooden board and said, "Jobs, we need to make the back of the fence just as good as the front." Jobs frowned. "But no one will see the back." His father looked at him firmly and replied, "But you'll know. Even if no one sees it, you should make it just as good as the front." This lesson had a big impact on Jobs. He always cared about the beauty of things people couldn't see. He believed that the way a product looked on the outside and the quality inside were both important. This idea would later shape Apple's design. When designing the iMac, Jobs made sure the clear, smooth, and rounded outside showed the beautiful inner parts which amazed users. Jobs' home was in Mountain View, California. This place was special. It was the heart of Silicon Valley, full of new technology and big ideas. People here always tried to break the rules and push limits. In Silicon Valley, failure was not the end. It was just a step to try again, learn, and improve. Only 3 kilometers from Jobs' house was HP, Hewlett-Packard, a famous technology company. Its influence was everywhere. Jobs' neighbors were not ordinary people. Many were engineers, scientists, and entrepreneurs from around the world. Some were artists. Their ideas and way of thinking were different. This helped Jobs see the world in new ways. It shaped how he thought and how he worked. Jobs had a neighbor, Larry Lang, who was an engineer at HP. With Lang's help, Jobs joined the HP Explorers Club. He was so fascinated by computers that one day he stopped an engineer and asked to see a real computer. At that time, computers were rare and mysterious. When Jobs saw one for the first time, he was completely amazed. The HP Explorers Club invited engineers from HP to speak about their work every week. The club not only taught students, but also encouraged them to build projects. Jobs decided to make a frequency counter, a device that measures electronic pulses per second. However, he needed special parts made by HP. Most kids might have given up or asked a teacher for help, but Jobs had a different idea. He looked up HP co-founder Bill Hewlett's phone number in the directory and called him. Surprisingly, Bill Hewlett answered. "Hi, my name is Steve Jobs," he said without hesitation. "I'm 12 years old and trying to build a frequency counter. Do you have any spare parts I could use?" Hewlett laughed, not to make fun of Jobs, but because he admired his courage. They talked for a few minutes, and in the end, Hewlett did more than just give him the parts. He offered Jobs a summer job at the HP Frequency Counter Factory. At HP, Jobs learned even more about electronics. But more importantly, he met Steve Wozniak, who would become his lifelong friend and business partner. This experience shaped Jobs' future. His environment surrounded him with technology and innovation. His passion for electronics grew naturally, but most importantly, his boldness and willingness to take action set him apart. Instead of waiting for opportunities, he created them. Late at night in Silicon Valley, secret tech meetups took place. Hackers, engineers, and dreamers gathered to share ideas. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak often joined them. Jobs and Woz were very different. Jobs was intense and full of energy. Woz was easygoing and loved to create. Jobs had big ideas. Woz could build anything. His tech skills were genius. But they had one thing in common. They loved computers. One day, Jobs read an article about a man named Captain Crunch. This man had figured out how to make free phone calls. Excited, Jobs searched for more information. He found a technical journal from AT&T that explained the system. 3 weeks later, Jobs and Woz built a small device. It was called a Blue Box, and it could make free phone calls. They tested it on friends. They even made a prank call to the Pope. The Blue Box worked. Then, they started selling it. At first, it was just a fun project, but for Jobs, it was something more. He realized that technology was not just about wires and circuits. It was about ideas. It was about selling. It was about changing the way people connect. Jobs learned an important lesson. They could build a small device that controlled something massive. This realization changed everything and shaped Apple's future. Jobs understood that well-designed small products could change the world. With Woz, his perfect partner, Woz created incredible things, while Jobs knew how to share them with the world. In 1972, Steve Jobs stepped onto the Reed College campus, expecting to find inspiration, knowledge, and a place where curiosity thrived. But instead, he found long lectures, strict rules, and boring classes. There was no creativity. He didn't feel the same spark he had in his father's garage. It wasn't like working at HP or building new things. Something was missing. Most students believed college was the only way to a good future, but Jobs was different. While others worried about jobs and degrees, he thought about something else: passion. So, he made a bold choice. He dropped out. Even after leaving, Steve Jobs didn't completely stay away from Reed College. Without required classes, he was free to learn what he loved. That's when he found calligraphy, the smooth strokes, the perfect spacing, the hidden beauty in tiny details most people ignored. It was art. But back then, he wasn't thinking about computers. He was just following his heart, exploring whatever excited him. Years later, this love for fonts helped create the Mac's revolutionary design. At that time, Jobs wanted the Macintosh to be more creative and competitive. To do that, he studied IBM's computers closely. Thanks to his calligraphy class at Reed College, he had a sharp eye for design. He quickly spotted a problem. IBM's fonts didn't look good. IBM's letters were made of square pixels. They all had the same width. They looked rough, plain, and mechanical. There was no variety. IBM focused on making computers efficient, but not user-friendly. Jobs believed that focusing on user experience could give Macintosh an edge. After countless attempts, Jobs finally settled on his solution. He insisted that letters should have different spacing to make reading feel more natural. He also introduced a variety of fonts to give users more choices. Monaco, a stylish, pixel-friendly font later used in the iPod. Geneva, a clean, easy-to-read sans serif font. New York, a serif font inspired by calligraphy, making text more elegant and print-like. Chicago, the most iconic Macintosh font designed for clear screen readability. By making fonts beautiful and readable, Jobs forever changed the way people experienced computers. His vision ultimately influenced modern graphical user interface, GUI, design, and set the standard for digital typography. They launched the Macintosh in 1984. It made history. Jobs once emphasized in a public speech that following his curiosity and intuition turned out to be invaluable later on. He said, "You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward." Like many college students, Jobs was searching for the meaning of life at this point in his journey. He was eager to understand who he truly was and how he could find his place in the world. This inner quest led him to explore different ideas and philosophies. One day, while searching for answers, he picked up a book that would deeply influence his thinking. Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Shunryu Suzuki. The book introduced him to the concept of the beginner's mind, the idea of approaching life with fresh eyes, free from assumptions or judgments. A true Zen practitioner does not try to control or analyze everything. Instead, they simply observe, letting things reveal their true nature. Shunryu Suzuki followed the Soto Zen tradition, which can be traced back to Huineng, the sixth patriarch of Chinese Zen. Zen has 5 major schools: Guiyang, Caodong, Linji, Yunmen, and Fai'an. The Soto school, known as Caodong in China, was originally founded by Dongshan, with his disciple Kaoshan helping to expand it. The name Caodong was chosen because it sounded harmonious in Chinese. One of the main principles of the Soto school is achieving inner peace and sudden enlightenment through sitting meditation, which helps to block the distractions of the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. These books changed the way Jobs thought. If beginner's mind meant always seeing the world as if for the first time, how should he see his own life? If true wisdom came from removing distractions, what did that mean for his future? He was fascinated, but still uncertain. He wanted to experience Zen, not just read about it. In the summer of 1974, Jobs quit his job as a technician and decided to go on a spiritual journey to India. He arrived barefoot, wearing worn-out clothes, seeking meaning. It was his first time seeing so many poor people. During his travels, he spent a lot of time reflecting and meditating. He often sat in silence, facing a wall, thinking deeply about life. His biggest realization was that the poverty he had seen in California among the hippies was a choice. But in India, poverty felt like a result of fate. The hippie movement was about seeking a deeper life experience. It wasn't just about work and family. It was about finding meaning and value beyond the material world. This mindset had a lasting impact on Jobs. He brought this philosophy into Apple's product designs, especially when creating the Macintosh. Jobs saw computers as more than just tools. He wanted his products to connect with people on an emotional level, not just meet their functional needs. This creativity and pursuit of something deeper were the most important lessons Jobs learned from the hippie culture. 7 months later, Jobs returned from India, still searching for the spiritual guide he had hoped to find. During this time, he met Kobun Chino Otagawa, a Soto Zen monk and a disciple of the same Zen lineage as Shunryu Suzuki. One night, with long hair, bare feet, and torn jeans, he knocked on Kobun's door. It was late. The air was cold. When Kobun opened the door, Jobs looked at him and said, "I want to go to Japan. I want to become a monk." Kobun shook his head. "No," he said. Instead of explaining, he told a story. One day, 2 monks were arguing. One said, "The wind is moving." The other said, "No, the flag is moving." Then Huineng, the 6th patriarch, spoke. "It is not the wind that moves. It is not the flag that moves. It is your mind that moves." Kobun looked at Jobs. "You don't need to go anywhere," he said. "Follow your heart. A true Buddhist does not need to escape to the mountains. Zen is inside you. Whether you live in a monastery or build a company, the practice is the same." Something clicked inside Jobs. He didn't need to escape or abandon everything. Zen wasn't about leaving the world, it was about seeing it clearly. The path became clear. Through Jobs' study of Zen and the guidance of Kobun, his intuition grew sharper. Zen taught simplicity, living in the moment, and embracing imperfection, ideas that deeply shaped his creative vision. He believed that less is more and applied it to every detail of Apple's designs. He also embraced the Zen principle of a beginner's mind, staying open to new ideas and challenging old ways of thinking. This mindset fueled his ability to innovate, helping him create products that would redefine technology and change the world. After returning from India, Jobs needed a job to support himself, so he found work at Atari, a company famous for making video games. At Atari, Jobs worked with his future Apple co-founder, Steve Wozniak, to improve a game. Wozniak, who was great at engineering, designed the technology, while Jobs focused on making the game more visually appealing and engaging. This experience helped Jobs learn how to combine technology with design and creativity. These skills played a big role when he later created the Macintosh and other iconic Apple products. At this time, Jobs was still obsessed with computers. There was a time-sharing company in Mountain View that let people use computers for a price. But it was too expensive for Jobs and Wozniak, so they decided to build their own equipment. They loved computers so much, they had to do it. They collected parts from around the area and spent 40 to 80 hours putting everything together. There were always problems with tiny wires, but they kept going. Once they finished the circuit boards, Jobs realized that many of his friends wanted one. They could find parts, but didn't have the skills to build them. Jobs saw a business opportunity. He decided to make a lot of circuit boards and sell them. But there was one problem. They didn't have money to buy the parts. Jobs sold his Volkswagen van, and Wozniak sold his calculator to raise enough money to hire a friend to design the printed circuit board. Building printed circuit boards solved many problems. It reduced the time needed to assemble a machine from 40 to 80 hours to just a few hours. Now they could produce in bulk. They set up a workshop in Jobs' parents' garage in Los Altos, California. Wozniak worked on perfecting the circuit, and soon they had a fully working prototype. Jobs began selling them to his friends. There were some left over, so Jobs looked for a way to sell the rest. He took the machines to the Byte Shop, a small computer store. The owner, Paul Terrell, liked the product but said he would only buy them if they were fully assembled. Terrell agreed to buy 50 units for $500 each. With this deal in hand, Jobs went to Kramer Electronics, a big electronics distributor. He convinced them to let him take the parts on credit. Jobs promised he would pay once the computers were sold. Jobs bought parts for 100 units. When he sold the first 50 to the Byte Shop, he would make enough to cover the next 50. He called on friends and family to help. They worked together, soldering parts, testing each one. When the computers were ready, Jobs packed them in his car and drove them to the Byte Shop. Terrell was surprised when he opened the boxes. All he delivered were the circuit boards. The keyboards, monitors, and power supplies were not included. But Terrell still accepted the machines and paid the agreed price. Even though Jobs had made money from the first 50 units, his real profit came from the unsold 50. Jobs began to wonder, are there other computer stores in America? So, he started calling computer stores across the country. Slowly, his computer business began to grow. As Apple I sales grew, Jobs received more feedback from customers. The Apple I was a simple product, just a circuit board. It worked, but it wasn't enough. Only hobbyists were interested. This led to the idea for the Apple II. Jobs wanted to create a real personal computer, a fully assembled, easy-to-use machine for everyone, not just hardware enthusiasts. With the design in mind, Jobs and Wozniak realized they still didn't have enough money. They needed thousands of dollars for the case and other parts. Through a venture capitalist, Jobs reached out to Mike Markkula, a former Intel executive. Markkula saw Apple's potential. He invested $250,000 and became Apple's third employee. With this investment, Jobs began working on the Apple II. But there was a problem. Jobs knew the exact cost of building an Apple I. But when he started working with the accounting department for the Apple II, they introduced a concept called standard cost that didn't make sense to him. When Jobs asked why, they always answered, "That's how we've always done it." Jobs was obsessed with understanding every detail, especially costs, since they directly affected profits. After months of questioning, Jobs figured out the problem. The reason you don't know how much it costs is because your information systems aren't good enough. Jobs created a new information system, moving away from old methods. This allowed him to know the exact cost of everything. His secret was simple. If you're willing to ask a lot of questions, think carefully, and work really hard, you can achieve great things. Jobs' obsession with details and his passion for design were also evident in the Apple II. He was very particular about the initial design of the Apple II, even rejecting the first version because the lines weren't straight enough. He insisted on the beautiful layout of the internal circuit board, just like his adoptive father had told him. Perfection means paying attention to the parts people can't see. Jobs also wanted computers in the 80s to display rounded rectangles. When technology pushed back, he would take the engineers for a walk around town, pointing at car windows and signs. Rounded corners are a must. Look, they're everywhere. Eventually, the engineers agreed with his vision. When the Apple II was finally released, it was a huge success. People loved it. Jobs and Wozniak's hard work had paid off. At just 21, Jobs became a millionaire. By 25, his net worth was over $100 million. But what mattered most to him wasn't the money. It was the vision, the people, the craftsmanship, and the impact their product could have on the world. As Apple grew, so did the challenges. IBM entered the personal computer market and quickly became the biggest competitor. IBM's computers were powerful and business-friendly. Many people thought Apple couldn't survive against such a giant. In 1983, Jobs made a bold move. He wanted someone experienced to help run the company. He looked for a business leader who could bring structure and strategy. That's when he met John Sculley, the CEO of Pepsi. Sculley had turned Pepsi into a powerful brand fighting directly against Coca-Cola. Jobs asked him a question that would change both their lives forever. Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or do you want to come with me and change the world? Sculley was impressed. He left Pepsi and became Apple's new CEO. At first, everything seemed perfect. Jobs focused on innovation while Sculley handled business. But Jobs' vision wasn't just about computers. He wanted his products to have a soul, to be spiritually inspiring. In 1984, Jobs led the launch of the Macintosh computer. It featured an innovative graphical user interface, a simple and stylish design, and excelled in displaying graphics and text. This made it especially appealing to designers, artists, and visual creatives. However, it was very expensive, making it hard for many people to afford. Additionally, there were fewer software options, which made it less attractive to users who were used to having a variety of programs on other computers. As a result, the Macintosh didn't meet sales expectations. By late 1984, the entire computer industry was struggling. Sales were shrinking quickly. John Sculley, the CEO, was at a loss. He was a traditional sales-focused manager, more concerned with sales than product innovation. But Jobs was firm in his belief that the Macintosh was Apple's future. He pushed for heavy cuts in the Apple II budget and wanted to invest more in the Macintosh. Jobs and Sculley clashed. Sculley, however, was very skilled at surviving in tough situations. He had strong connections with the board of directors, and they trusted him. As a result, they sided with Sculley and decided to push Jobs out of the company. Jobs wanted to stay at Apple and hoped the company would keep him. He suggested creating a research team to develop new ideas, but the board did not agree. In the end, Jobs had to leave the company he had built. It was painful for Jobs to be pushed out by the people he had hired, but what hurt even more was that Sculley later changed Apple's direction without him. This destroyed everything Jobs had worked on for 10 years and led Apple toward failure. When Jobs left, the Macintosh was 10 years ahead of the industry. After he left, it took Microsoft 10 years to catch up, but the Macintosh computer barely changed. Years later, when Jobs looked back on this painful experience, he said that getting fired from Apple was the best thing that ever happened to him. Nothing felt certain anymore, but his love for his work was the only thing that kept him moving forward. Deep inside, one thing never changed. Jobs didn't just love technology, he loved what it could awaken in people. His true passion was creating things that bridged the gap between machines and the human soul. Guided by intuition and passion, even with nothing, he could still do what he loved most. He used his money to start a new company. Next, his goal was to build powerful computers that could ignite young minds in education and beyond. This time, there was no board to stop him. No CEO to rein him in. It was pure, his vision, his values, his creation, a chance to shape technology not just with power, but with purpose. The road was not easy. Next, computers were too expensive, and schools couldn't afford them. Next's operating system was technically brilliant, but it failed to gain mainstream traction. Yet, this setback would become a seed of future success. Next Step later became the foundation of Apple's macOS, laying the groundwork for his return. His departure from Apple didn't silence his drive, it refined it. Searching for his next canvas, Jobs found it in an unlikely place: the computer animation group within George Lucas's Lucasfilm. Around the same time, Lucas, facing personal and financial struggles, was looking to sell. At first glance, it was just a small team of brilliant engineers building experimental CGI technology. But Jobs saw more. He saw a way to bring emotion to the digital world, to use code to tell human stories. With $10 million, half to acquire the team, half to keep it alive, he renamed it Pixar. Jobs also recognized that technology alone wasn't enough. It was the people behind it who would make Pixar revolutionary. Ed Catmull, a pioneer in 3D graphics, and John Lasseter, a visionary storyteller from Disney, had together developed RenderMan, a groundbreaking tool that brought digital worlds to life. They embodied the perfect fusion of art and science, exactly the intersection where Jobs believed true magic happened. He poured everything into Pixar, not just money, but belief. At the time, Disney was the undisputed king of animation, but Jobs believed Disney had grown complacent, still relying on hand-drawn methods. Pixar's CGI was the future, and he was determined to prove it. In 1988, Pixar's short film Tin Toy won the Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film, catching Disney's attention. In 1991, Pixar signed a 3-picture deal with Disney, beginning with Toy Story. The team worked tirelessly to push the boundaries of what animation could be. And on November 22, 1995, Toy Story premiered, the first ever fully computer-animated feature film. It was a smash hit, earning $373 million worldwide and redefining the industry. Pixar went public. Its stock surged. Jobs' fortune soared from $40 million to $1.2 billion in days. But more importantly, he had proven what he always believed. With vision, the right people, and unrelenting belief, you could change the world, not just through machines, but through meaning. In the end, it was never just about money or success. Jobs had found the work he loved most, and when you do something truly meaningful, passion fuels persistence, and the impossible becomes real. As Jobs was building Pixar into a creative powerhouse, the computer world moved on without him. Microsoft and IBM had taken over, with faster, cheaper, more compatible systems. Apple, the company he once poured his soul into, was sinking. Too many products, no direction. Market share crashed below 5% by 1996. Apple was dying. Desperate to survive, Apple made a bold move. It bought Next for $400 million. But this wasn't just about software. Apple needed something far more important. It needed Jobs. More than anything, it needed his vision. Once back in charge, Jobs wasted no time. He moved fast. He moved hard. Projects like Newton, CyberDog, OpenDoc, gone. He was ruthless, because Apple had to focus or die. Then came the shocker. Jobs made a deal with Microsoft. Bill Gates invested $150 million in Apple. The world was stunned. Jobs knew money wouldn't save Apple. People would, great people. He wasn't trying to convince anyone. He was looking for those who already believed, those with the vision and talent to build something extraordinary. Not committees, not compromises, but people who cared deeply and challenged each other fiercely. One of them was Jony Ive, quiet, overlooked, but brilliant. Together, they would rebuild Apple's soul. Jobs led with fire, intense, demanding, focused, not for ego, for results. And it worked. That mindset, it began with a childhood moment. An old neighbor once showed him something that left a mark on him forever. One day, the man took out a motor and an empty coffee can. Together, they went to the backyard and picked up some rough, ugly stones. The man put them into the can, added liquid and grit powder, then turned on the motor. The can started shaking. The stones inside tumbled and clashed, making a loud noise. The next day, they opened the can. The rough stones had turned into smooth, polished gems. The man explained. Friction, noise, and constant collision had transformed them. Jobs never forgot this. He believed that great teams worked the same way. When passionate people challenge each other, argue, and push ideas forward, something amazing happens. To Jobs, truly great people know they're great. There's no need to tiptoe around egos, because in the end, it's the work that matters. Then came his clearest vision yet. The iMac. Sleek, colorful, even the handle felt playful, but every detail was intentional. Sales soared. Apple, once near death, was suddenly alive. But this wasn't just a comeback, it was a revelation. A vision shaped by Zen simplicity, cutting through the noise, focusing only on what matters, and daring to reimagine everything. Through clarity, intuition, and an obsessive pursuit of excellence, Jobs didn't just revive a company. He sparked a revolution and reshaped an era. Innovation to Steve Jobs was like building with blocks. You had to piece together different elements, testing and refining, until something beautiful emerged, something that not only satisfied him, but captivated the world. Before the iPod, MP3 players existed, but they never took off. Jobs had been watching the market for years, waiting for the right moment. Then, in 2000, he heard about Toshiba's new hard drive, small enough to fit in your hand, yet capable of holding 5 gigabytes of music. That was the breakthrough he needed. Apple found a battery that could last 10 hours of continuous play. Then came the genius design, a simple scroll wheel that let you navigate thousands of songs with just your thumb. But there was one last problem. Where would people get the music? Jobs solved it by convincing the major record labels to sell songs for just 99 cents each on iTunes. With the hard drive, battery, scroll wheel, and iTunes in place, the iPod launched and changed everything. By the mid-2000s, Apple had revolutionized the music industry. Looking back, the success seemed inevitable, but at the time, there had been endless decisions, countless possibilities. Jobs' genius lay in cutting through the noise and finding the perfect combination. When you design a product, he once said, you have to hold 5,000 things in your head at once and make them all fit together. The iPod was just the beginning. Jobs had his sights set on a new target, the phone. Back then, phones were everywhere, but they were bulky and hard to use. Jobs wanted to change that. Initially, Apple was working on a touchscreen tablet, but Jobs had a better idea, a phone with a touchscreen. If it worked, it could put a computer in your pocket. The challenge? No one had done it before. The first hurdle was the screen. Phones had keyboards. How could you type without one? The answer, multi-touch. A secret technology Apple was developing. It let the whole screen respond to your fingers. No buttons, no limits. Then came the software. Most phones ran outdated systems, but Jobs insisted the iPhone run Mac OS, Apple's computer OS. Engineers said it was impossible, but Jobs wouldn't accept no for an answer. After months of work, they made it happen. But the real challenge was business. Jobs first approached Verizon, but they rejected him. Apple demanded full control, no carrier branding, no pre-installed apps, and complete control over updates and the App Store. Verizon refused. Next, Jobs turned to Cingular Wireless, a smaller, hungry carrier eager to grow. He offered them exclusive rights to the iPhone and convinced them it was more than just a phone. It was a mobile computer that would change everything. To seal the deal, Apple shared revenue, including data fees. Cingular became the iPhone's first carrier partner. On January 9, 2007 at Macworld, Jobs unveiled the iPhone, a sleek, all-glass device with just one button. The iPhone became an instant global hit. Millions switched to Cingular just to get one, making it the fastest-growing carrier in the U.S. Verizon, realizing its mistake, finally started selling the iPhone in 2011. But the story never truly ends. For Steve Jobs, it was never just about technology. It was about intuition, boldness, and seeing the world differently. He inspired millions to challenge the norm, trust their instincts, and, above all, have the patience to stay true to their beliefs, pushing the limits of innovation until breakthroughs became inevitable.